The vehicle with me today is the all-new Land Rover Defender V8. So this is the new top-of-the-line, most exclusive, most expensive, and definitely most powerful Land Rover Defender model that you can buy. Now, when you think of Defender, you think about, the iconic design, you think about the off-road capability. You might also think about the towing capacity because Defender models have pretty impressive towing capabilities. What you don't think about is straight line performance, especially if you've driven or read about the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which comes standard in the Defender, or even the inline 6 with 395 horsepower. They're just not that quick. And this is a big, massive SUV that's very heavy. It's nearly 7,000 pounds. And so the turbocharged 4 and the inline 6, they struggle to move this with any kind of impressive conviction. Well, the V8 comes in and it solves all of that. Now, the supercharged V8 that powers the Defender is an engine that we've seen multiple times in many JLR products. We've seen it in the Range Rover Sport SVR, we've seen it in the Jaguar F-Pace SVR, we've seen it in the Jaguar F-Type as well, and now it makes its way under the hood of the Defender. This is a very powerful engine. It's a very loud engine as well, with a very characteristic soundtrack coming from the exhaust. In the case of the Defender, it makes 518 horsepower and 469 pound-feet of torque. So it's not as powerful as what you see on a Range Rover Sport SVR or F-Pace SVR, but it's still pretty darn quick in the Defender. It will power the model to 100 kilometers per hour in about 5.5 seconds, while the turbocharged 4-cylinder needs 7.1 seconds and the inline 6 needs 6.1 seconds. So from a performance standpoint, on paper, you definitely see that this is a very, very quick Defender, and you can see the impact of the V8 immediately. Now, when you're on the road, the difference between a V8 powered Defender and any other trim is even more impressive and noticeable. So the Defender V8 doesn't just have a more powerful engine, it also has received some chassis improvements to make sure that the vehicle can handle all of this added performance. So there are stiffer anti-roll bars, stiffer front and rear suspension, stiffer springs. They've also reworked the adaptive suspension system as well. And then visually, well, you get larger 22-inch wheels, you also get Brembo brakes, and you get a quad exhaust in the back. So when it comes to differentiating the V8 from other trims, the differences really aren't that noticeable from a design standpoint, and only those who know will notice immediately that this is the more exclusive, more powerful V8 version. There are some V8 badges as well on the side, but ultimately this really looks like any other Defender aside from the wheels. And then in terms of the handling, however, and the sportiness, Land Rover engineers wanted to dial it up a little bit and make this vehicle not just quicker in a straight line, but also make sure that it offers better handling and better performance as well. We do want to talk about these improvements that Land Rover made to the suspension, to the wheels, the brakes, all that. Does it give you the confidence to really push this massive SUV through corners? And honestly, the answer is no. It really still feels very big. The steering is still vague. It's not a performance SUV that gave me any sort of inkling to really try to push it through corners. And I don't think that's really where Land Rover wanted to go with this. They obviously had to make some improvements to the handling and the suspension to handle the extra power, but I don't think they ever wanted to turn it into sort of a track or high performance dynamic SUV like they did with a Range Rover Sport SVR or the F-Pace SVR. I think they understand that nobody's going to be taking this on a track, that nobody will even consider taking it on a track, and therefore they also probably were thinking that, you know, with the size of this thing and the weight, I mean, this is 7,000 pounds. There's only so much you can do to make it agile and make it handle well. So I think what they wanted to do was say, look, it's going to be really quick in a straight line. That's where you're going to see the benefits of owning this V8 version of the Defender. And as for the handling, obviously it's sharper than other Defender trims, but this isn't really about having fun in a corner. It's about having fun when you're coming out of the corner. What I found personally to be the most appealing feature of the Defender V8 is the fact that despite the added performance and the bigger engine under the hood, you don't really lose any of the characteristics that, in my opinion, make the Defender such an appealing vehicle. You certainly don't lose the off-road capability. This thing can go as far as off the beaten path as any other Defender model. You might want to think about swapping out the 22-inch wheels and tires if you are going to be doing some serious off-roading, because these aren't the tires to do that with. But aside from that, if you get the proper tires and wheel setup on this thing, it will go off-road with any other Defender and any other off-road vehicle with complete confidence. You also get the great towing capacity. The fact that there's a quad exhaust in the back hasn't hindered the hitch in any way. It hasn't taken away from the towing capability, which is 3,500 kilos. That's over 7,700 pounds. That is significant. You know, this is an SUV that has very impressive towing capacity. If you're looking for that in your luxury SUV, this is one of the better options, and you don't lose that with the V8 either. And then once you head out on the road, when you dial back the driving modes, you put it in comfort, you're not really sacrificing any of the refinement of the other Defender. Now, I say that between quotes because the Defender, it's not a Range Rover, it's not even a Range Rover Sport. It is definitely a bit of a harsher ride than what most luxury SUVs in this price range provide. It can be jumpy. There is some wind noise. I mean, the thing, you know, it has the aerodynamic properties of a garage door, so obviously there's going to be some wind noise there, but it's not exactly uncomfortable. And the V8 version really is fine if you're doing some long highway driving. It's not too harsh. It can handle bumps. It can handle potholes. It's not in any way jagged. I mean, you know, it's not a Jeep Wrangler. You're in a completely different world. I would even say that compared to the G-Class, the Defender is a step ahead in terms of comfort. And again, you don't lose that when you put a V8. The other characteristic of the Defender V8 that you will find also on other Defender models is the impressive interior space and the incredible versatility and practicality of the interior, especially the passenger compartments. There is a lot of space in a Defender. There's a lot of space in the second row for your legs, for your head. There's a lot of space up front as well. This is a very welcoming sport utility vehicle. If you have a family, if you have a lot of stuff to bring with you, there is a lot of room inside. You won't have any trouble putting your kid into a child seat in the Defender. And even the cargo area, obviously, It's a bit smaller given the format of the vehicle, but compared to a G-Class, compared to a Wrangler, I mean, there is a ton of space back there compared to other off-road focused SUVs, and the V8 doesn't obviously come and compromise any of that. Now the interior dashboard and the layout, as well as the infotainment system of the Defender V8 is essentially identical to what you find on other Defender models. As a matter of fact, the entire interior is nearly identical. But that's a good thing because the Defender interior, again, just like it is really spacious, well, it's also really well laid out. So when you're looking at the dashboard and you're looking at the center console, you get plenty of storage space. You can really just empty out your pockets. That's not an issue at all. The infotainment system is well designed. It's not frustrating. It's quick to react. It's easy to use. The Apple CarPlay system didn't give me any problems during my week with the Defender. It didn't disconnect for no reason or anything like that. So on that sense, again, just really focused on providing a calming and a soothing driving experience. There's room and the features are very easy to access and to use. And then, of course, you get the same layout in terms of the various climate control functions, as well as how you select the terrain response mode and so forth. That's all very similar as what you find in recent Land Rover and Range Rover vehicles. So everything is kind of controlled through the two dials here. Takes a bit of time to get used to it. If you know, as a journalist, we only get 1 week with the vehicle. It's a bit frustrating during that first week to handle this, to try to figure out what do I have to press to change the temperature, what do I have to press to change the driving mode. But it's nothing that you won't end up getting used to if you buy the vehicle. Reliability-wise, we do have to wait to see how it holds up in time. What I can tell you is that if you live in a climate where there's winter, it can be a bit annoying with your gloves to have to try to play with the different things and change the function of the dials. But they don't lag when it's cold out, so that's definitely a plus. But overall, you know, this is a very well-designed interior, very functional interior, and a very ergonomic interior as well. So look, I have to admit, I mean, I loved every single thing about the Defender V8 because essentially what it does is it takes care of the only real problem that, in my opinion at least, the Defender had, which was lack of power. This takes care of that in a big way. This is no longer a slow or sluggish SUV. Now it's a really quick SUV, and that sounds really good as well. And that now has all of the other benefits of the Defender without the compromise on the performance. That said, it's $133,000 here in Canada, and you're quickly going to get over $150,000. And that's if you can even find one, because right now Land Rover, they aren't building this particular version of the Defender. They're actually focused more on four-cylinder models, and once they can catch up to the demand on that end, they're going to go to the inline six. So it might be a while before you can get a Defender V8, and then when you get one, you have to expect it, current market conditions notwithstanding, that it will eventually begin to depreciate, and it will depreciate big time. These are not vehicles that tend to hold their value very well. Tack on to that a stupid fuel consumption. I mean, it is ridiculous. You're talking 14, 15, 16 liters per 100 kilometers, and you're not doing anything. When you start to play with the V8 and you start pushing it a little bit, you're at 20, 21, 22 liters per 100 kilometers. That's a part of this supercharged V8 that really permeates every JLR vehicle that has it. The Range Rover Sport SVR, I drove that 4 years ago, and it is still to this day the vehicle. The Ram TRX beat it out recently, but it's still number 2 in the vehicles that had the highest fuel consumption rating when I was testing it out. So fuel consumption and fuel mileage is 0. and depreciation is going to be high, and the cost is also going to be fairly significant if you can find one. But all of that put aside, when it just comes to pure passion and pure performance, this is a very exciting and very, very appealing new addition to the Defender lineup.